Well, welcome to our first podcast. We are a team of um, food consultants and software developers wanting to talk to you a little bit about what's currently going on with COVID and how it might be impacting your businesses. So my name is Jennifer Crandall. I'm founder and CEO of Safe Food en Route. My company is a US-based company, food safety consulting with a focus on foreign supplier verification program rule and on supplier compliance management. I'm also partnered up as U.S. country partner to Priority Limited, which is owned by James Flynn, and I'll turn it over to him to do a brief introduction as well.
Hi there, my name is James Flynn. I'm CTO of Priority. I'm primarily a HACCP and food safety guy for over 25 years, and I specialize in creating software which helps food companies digitize their food safety management and supplier compliance processes and so on. Over to you, Andy.
Hey, I'm Andy Kerridge. 25, 30 years experience in food safety, primarily in food service. But having said that, I started off in farming and went through manufacturing to get to food service. So for the last 8 years, I've been running my own company, providing food safety and quality advice to basically from the blue chip down to startups. I have an involvement with Priority over the last 3-4 years, and happy to be part of the team on the podcast today.
Great. All right. So without further ado, let's just start talking a little bit about what is going on in the world globally right now. Today is April 6th. And we're well into probably 4 or 5 months of this pandemic that we've been experiencing. Andy, why don't you speak a little bit about some of the observations that you are seeing with your clients and just in general the landscape of food industry?
My clients at the moment include manufacturing and food service, and particularly it's quite a the manufacturing side is madly busy. The food service distribution is ceased. Their market has closed down. Their employees are furloughed, and they're trying to sell their stock off locally via Facebook and whatever else they can get rid of. So quite a diversity. The manufacturing is they're struggling in terms of balancing out the social distancing aspects on lines. And then I've got another part of my business which is doing nothing.
Right.
So, yeah, it's quite a contrast.
It definitely is. I'm seeing very similar in my business as well. Some of my clients have gone very quiet, and they're so heads down that they're barely breathing, trying to just keep up with the demand. And then others are sitting idle, waiting. Are you seeing the same things as well, James, with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So our two main segments that we deal with are food manufacturing companies and also US-based importers. And what I'm seeing is the importers are all very quiet. They are probably just getting on with things and trying to deal with any challenges that they're overcoming, but I'm not really hearing very much from them. On the manufacturing side, our clients, for example, technical managers and supplier compliance managers, a lot of them are working from home. And one of the benefits that they're really seeing about using our software, for example, is that they're able to do that seamlessly because they have a cloud-based food safety management system, and it doesn't matter where they are. They can work from home, they can work from the office, whatever. But they're reporting to me that they're managing to get a lot more done because they're getting less interruptions, for example. So we're early stages with this stuff, so we just need to wait and see how this really pans out. But ultimately, we are fortunate that we are working in the food industry. It's an essential service. Everyone needs to eat. And particularly for us, because we are in the food manufacturing sector, so far, fingers crossed, we are not adversely affected. And, we're just trying to support our customers as best we can.
Right. I'm with the restaurant industry, the food service industry. Andy, you mentioned the waste that you're seeing. I'm definitely seeing that. I'm seeing an uptick in people trying to, actually one of my clients just asked me to donate to an organization to help feed the hungry. I am seeing some of the companies that I engage with that are trying to do a lot of donation of their inventory. Are you seeing the same thing with the ones that are trying to deal with offloading their waste?
Yeah, they are. I mean, the companies are doing a couple of things. Yes, they're doing this donation, and that's a short-term thing because it's dealing with the stock that they have, whether it be chilled or frozen or ambient. But the other thing is a number of them are repurposing and either, I mean, completely different and just becoming a hub for the village or town or where they are. You know, my local pub here has a vegetable merchant set up in their yard. So because the car park isn't being used for visitors to the pub, they've managed to host a village market there and home delivery from there as well. And then you see other places doing home delivery of prepared meals, which raises other concerns about their capabilities in the area of that they're switching from serving hot food direct to customers to hot food and either cook chilling or trying to keep it hot and home delivery. And that's an area that we're struggling a little bit with in the UK in terms of guidance and how we manage that. Because it's a good thing they're doing the right thing in that sense, but are they doing it the right way?
Right.
Yeah, and that's got to be the big issue here, is that because there is so much change going on, you know, there's change in demand for staples, there's change in the fact that retail and hospitality are having to completely change their business models, particularly in hospitality. And all of this means that there are new processes getting put in place. There's maybe new ingredients and new suppliers they're having to use. And all of that introduced risk from a food safety perspective. And, you know, they're having to do this change really, really quickly. They don't have 2 months to turn this stuff around. You know, in a business that needs to survive, they've got to change within days in order to make sure that they can, you know, still make a profit, still keep a business going in the short term.
Right. So things that I'm seeing in the United States, and especially in the state that I live in Kentucky, our governor is giving a lot of kind of leadway guidance to our food service companies, trying to help them stay open. So he's suggesting carry out where people come and pick it up, or delivery if they can convert over to delivery. Certain services that I've been watching, and my husband and we've been watching, like, and I don't want to call out any particular types of services, but the ones that do pick up and delivery, similar to, you know, the taxi style services that we've seen, we're seeing that they're not respecting some of the regulation requirements. So Andy, you brought up that point of getting it hot food served hot and delivered hot. I am definitely, as a food scientist, concerned about that, as well as a citizen watching how they engage with the restaurant industry. They seem to not be respecting any of the guidances that are going on with social distancing. So it might be something that I'm just seeing with this particular area that I live in, but I was curious if you guys are seeing similar with the pickup services.
Well, I mean, I live out in the country. We don't have pickup services. You have to go and get it yourself. So, but I can imagine. I mean, I'm hearing things like that. Yes, not dissimilar. Is you know, the pickup service is not used to handling that type of products. The people that are making them are not used to making them in, you know, that type of container and so forth. And yeah, the labeling, etc., just isn't there. You know, when you're talking about allergens, when you're talking about things like that, it's all been done, as James say, in a matter of days. It's right, what can we do to rescue this business? And, you know, bought in a load of pizza boxes, bought in a load of takeaway containers, and just thought, right, we've got it, let's go.
And it's quite a big, quite an important point. You know, food factories and food facilities, for example, typically have a certain type of equipment and plant that they use to process and manufacture and pack that particular product. So Andy, you and I were on a call with one of our customers the other day, and they are an ice cream business. They're a high-end ice cream business. And all of a sudden, all of their orders have completely dried up because the retailers know that they're not going to be selling much ice cream during an emergency, a crisis like this. So for them, it totally is a matter of survival. You know, how can they get through the next couple of months? And maybe who knows how long this is going to be? Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months. How do they get through that period, still pay their bills, and be able to pay the wages of the staff and you know, keep the thing going? And you know, one suggestion was made was, well, you know, how quickly could you repurpose what you do to be, for example, a you know, frozen you know, mac and cheese business? You know, so it's like trying to work out what kind of product can you make that's going to be in demand, that's going to have a decent margin, that you can get the raw materials for, and that you can get the infrastructure together for quickly in order to survive and innovate and so on. So I'm sure there are a lot of small and medium-sized businesses out there who are completely in that sort of area, because the last thing they are able to do is go out and rush and buy new kit to change their businesses. The big guys can go do that, and they probably have the time to do that. But the small, medium-sized companies, they are in a real tight spot, because they need to work with what they've got, which might not be suitable for market demand.
Absolutely. Yeah, what you were saying just brings up a lot of other related topics of what we're experiencing in the United States. I think globally everybody's experiencing it, where they can't get proper PPE, and they're asking manufacturers of other items to convert over really quickly to create this PPE. And it's just not that easy if you don't have the equipment set up to be able to do it. But I think there's a different factor at hand when you're saying it about food, because when you're talking about food, it is just bringing up that food safety concern of you need to do a HACCP plan before you even start converting over, to see what kind of risks you have in your facility and be able to start lining up your process flow. There's a lot of things that might come into play that the food industry has to really be concerned about, because the later effect of maybe poisoning somebody.
Yeah.
So Andy, I know we've had lots of conversations about that as well. Are you seeing that? And I want to make sure, I'm going to shift just a smidge on it to make sure we're touching on all the different types of people that are affected by this in the food industry. And we've mentioned some of the service suppliers that come into these food service and manufacturing facilities as well, such as consultants and cleaning companies and pest control. What are you seeing in that arena with changes to their programs?
Should I jump in here? I mean, essentially, some factories, well, it's the supply chain has changed. People are producing less and less of what might be deemed as luxury items, and focusing on what are the core commodities to get them onto the shelves. So what you're seeing in some cases is parts of production plants mothballed. In the food service industry, it's the whole building is mothballed, because we can't do anything out of there. And that means that, you've got site security, you've got maybe issues with what's going on in terms of pest control in those areas. If an area is mothballed, is it then going to pose a risk to the rest of the site if it's within a business? From a site point of view, if you are still in business, you're trying to limit the number of people who are coming onto that site that don't normally come on there. So how are you dealing with those pest control people? If you get a breakdown on the line, you need to bring in an engineer coming from outside. Have you got the proper procedures in place and PPE for them to wear when they come onto the site? It's very different dealing with pest control when it's the perimeter baits to when it's actually in the edge of your storeroom, where people are likely to pass by, and still maintain that social distancing. So all these sort of elements there of how you deal with those people coming onto your site. They've got a perfect right to be there. You actually want them to be there in most cases, but it's then balancing that against the risk they then may pose to the people on site, or the people on site pose to them.
Definitely.
And one of the issues, if I can jump in here, Jennifer, is that on the one hand, you've got a lot of change going on in the industry, where you've got this repurposing happening or this changing of processes and so on to meet different demands. And then on the other hand, you've probably also got literally thousands of independent food safety consultants sitting at home who are not working right now because their clients are their normal clients, let's say, have mothballed things or have cut things down, or they're cutting their costs on any new projects and so on. So the expensive part about consultants is often because they have to travel somewhere, stay overnight, spend time in the factory and so on. And taking a digital approach to some of these things means that there's a lot of consultants out there who could do a few hours work here and there, help out with a HACCP plan, help out with validating information that supports that HACCP plan or that food safety plan, and so on. So one of the challenges here is how do you connect those two sources of need? Food company needs help with that stuff. Consultant needs help because they need work to be able to keep going. So this is an interesting one, and something that I'm starting to kind of think about in terms of the kind of networking part of that going forward. So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks on that front.
Yeah. Definitely, I agree because I do a lot of that matchmaking with my clients where I have a team of independent contractors that work with me and I match them to doing food safety work. A lot of it I focus on with Safe Food and Root is to make sure that it is virtual and that we're not stepping on their facilities as often, but that's because we're teamed up with importing companies, and importers need FSBP work, which doesn't necessarily require that we go to their sites. Somebody else has already been there. The auditors, we were talking about prior to starting the conversation, the auditors for any of the GFSI schemes currently are being told they can't go on site, they can't do virtual audits remotely. So if they wanted to, they can maybe do the desk audit, but they're not allowed to do the remote audits. Not sure why GFSI is taking that stance right now. Instead, they're extending certifications. But those people have a lot of auditing experience that they could be doing other things. So there's definitely ways to utilize them. Another thing is there's still a huge demand, to Andy's point, of people going on site. So one of my clients is focusing on bringing, they're bringing product in that they've never brought in before. It's getting shipped. It's already here, actually. It's already been purchased by another company and was going to be distributed into the food industry and into the food service industry. And instead, now it's going to be repurposed for sale for retail because the retailers are in such high demand. And it's really interesting to see what they're in demand of versus what they're not. So produce, there's an overflow of produce. There's no need. And in the beginning of this, the produce shelves were empty. I'm seeing news media saying stuff about right now, the milk industry is dumping thousands of gallons of milk down the drain because nobody is buying it because the food service industry was using so much of it. So it's definitely interesting to see where we need people and where we don't. Sushi industry's kind of getting impacted here big time. So that's a really good segue, actually, to just kind of talk about our ideas of predictions in this. It's hard to predict what's going on, but we kind of went over what we're seeing, what kind of short-term and long-term predictions could play out in this by the end of it. I mean, we have no idea how long we're going to be in quarantine or whatever everybody's calling it. We call it healthy at home in my state. So, Andy, if you want to start on kind of talking about short-term, long-term things that you think might happen.
Well, I mean, straight away in the food service sector, there's going to be a lot of closures of businesses. A lot of them were running on a knife edge anyway. and being knocked down like this for a couple of months. I mean, we're heading, it started for us in the UK around Mother's Day here, and the whole, Mother's Day weekend is usually a big dining out experience, and then it's going to be going through Easter as well. These are the start of some of the profitable times of the year. So that's one big change you're going to see. On the high street.
Before you go, can I interrupt you real quick before you go farther? Because we're talking to several different like global countries. Yeah. When is Mother's Day in the UK?
Well, that's why I say we're just because it's different. I know from the US, so
right.
That's why I highlighted
Ours is in May. So when is yours?
Yeah, it was a week last Sunday. So
okay.
Just past
so
Sunday days ago.
April 18th or
no ago.
March.
Oh my gosh, we're in April. I don't even know what month we are anymore. Okay. All right. So March. All right.
Yeah. That, and then that's the food service sector. Then you get on to retail, and for those retailers who are doing multiple operations, so if they're non-food, they're going to be suffering as well. The British High Street was already in crisis. The number of well-known names have gone down the chute over the last 2 or 3 years. There's going to be more of those as well. Yeah. So but conversely, the virtual trading area is probably going to boom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. What this virus will be remembered for, apart from all of the human suffering and economic loss, is it will be remembered for the virus that accelerated digitization on all kinds of levels: social, work, compliance, retail, everything. Because all of the businesses that had physical presences, they either need to go all in on digital now, or they just ain't going to be here. And this is not going to be over quickly. In my opinion, what we're witnessing is the first natural selection event, which is also not just affecting human life, but is affecting the economics of being a human being, because the way it's doing this is incredible. Yeah, this is Mother Nature at work. There are too many people on the planet. The planet is choking with pollution and dying through, it's heating up through climate change, for example. And Mother Nature takes care of it by cutting through and removing a substantial proportion of the population for a start, and also by stopping all of the activity which is leading to the damage in the planet. So from a philosophical point of view, this is probably due or overdue even. From a human point of view, things are clearly never going to be the same again. We may get back to some kind of similarity to the way life was just a few months ago, but I don't think that it's ever going to be quite the same. The large sporting events and so on, the Isle of Wight Festival, Wimbledon, Glastonbury, all of these kinds of events will be, I think, for the next couple of years, they are going to be off limits. So the way that we socially interact en masse, I think certainly for the next while, 1 year, 2 years, is gone. And I don't think that will come back quickly, because the risk of flare-ups and the risk of new economic and human damage is probably too great. This is going to keep going until it burns right entirely through the human population. And the worry is that it mutates into something even more dangerous than it is at the moment, because it seems to be targeting only or mainly those with weakened immune systems. What if this actually became more dangerous and was dangerous to people with normal immune systems? If that happens, we're talking Armageddon here. There is no way back from that.
We
at that point.
actually, you bring that up. The U.S. is showing a lot of media about regular everyday people contracting it, and some of them are recovering, but they're recovering after 15 to 20 days in the hospital on ventilators with assistance. And um, we also had the news covered that a Bronx Zoo tiger
Yeah,
I
just
heard
see
was
that.
that, yeah.
diagnosed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and if that, and I saw immediately when people started sharing that information on social media, the question was, can my pets get
Yeah.
this? We were told they can't, but I did see early on things about China saying that they were testing positive in pets.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, and if that's the case, like you said, James, Mother Nature has a way of taking care of things. I want to go back to your point because I think it's really just it's monumental, the change that's happening in our pollution state.
Mm.
So when you see some of the maps showing the smog lifting out of all of these countries, when China at a certain point they no longer had industry working and their smog was lifted, and you're seeing the same thing now in the United States and some of the other you know, first world countries that have a lot of manufacturing in them. My hope is that we will start focusing on environmental, protecting our Mother Earth a little bit more. But it's just interesting to see it from different country point of views, because the
Yeah.
U.S. we're still focusing on, get back to running. You mentioned sporting events. So the Indianapolis 500 is one of the major world races for cars globally. It's one of the largest, and they rescheduled to August. And our president is telling us that, hey, we're going to be back up and running. And you're saying maybe a couple of years. I'm really curious how the UK is predicting it versus the US on. And I didn't get a chance to see the Queen. I know she gave a speech yesterday. So we all talked about it, and then our president kind of stepped on it again and did a different take on it. So I'm curious what you guys are thinking on that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think, having spent some time in the States as well, the impact of these large events, I mean, how many thousand hotels are there around the US that are built next to a sports stadium? And during the week, they do nothing. And they're only there, the way they make money is because they're full at the weekend from these sports stadiums, for example.
Right.
There's a massive economy in all of these sorts of things. And, I know we're kind of getting off to food safety to a certain extent there, but yep, you're live. It's global.
That was great. I love it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. But the impact on all of these things is absolutely huge, because what happens is that people don't have money to spend, and then they don't, they're not spending in restaurants anymore. So the only places they've got to spend are supermarkets and online retail. And, for the foreseeable future, that's the only economy that exists. And that economy is probably only, I don't know, 20, 30% of the total economy. But, how many cars are on the road? How many mechanics are fixing cars? How many flights are flying? All of these people are all sidelined, and they are a key source of where the food industry gets its money, because if they don't have money to spend, then, it's going to filter down to the rest of the economy, whether we're in the food sector or not. House prices are going to drop because no one's got any money to buy houses, and therefore demand will slump. There's a tea lady. Well done, Andy.
that was quick.
That's because she got that new hip replacement. I saw how quickly she could move there.
In case you didn't know, she's also an intensive care nurse who's been two night shifts, so she's doing well to do that. Yeah.
I hope you're decontaminating when she comes home then, or are you just
absolutely. No,
and this is such an interesting point as well. They're talking now about COVID passports, so you get tested, you can prove you've had the virus, and then that kind of releases you up to be allowed to go out and do work and do stuff. So does when you think about it like this, does having COVID make you more valuable as an asset to your company or to your customer or whatever? I don't mean having COVID right now, but I mean having had it. and having had immunity. So this is one question. Second question is, just like with the cold and the flu, which coronavirus is of that same family, viruses, just because you've had one variety of that virus, the next season comes along and it's mutated slightly, and then you're no longer immune to that. And some flu seasons are worse than others because of that very thing. So, can you, while we're waiting for a vaccine, I mean, even with flu vaccines, they have to come up with a new one every year that covers all the bases.
But I mean, one of the things about COVID-19 is the human body has never had anything like that before. So that's why one of the reasons they believe it is being so tenacious and dangerous is because, yes, we do get new flu coming around every year, but it is a variant of an existing one. So we have a basic level of some immunity. But jumping to your other point on the this passport, is there's a whole raft of authenticity that is going to be needed around that passport and forgeries. I mean, as we used to get with the early days of certification and so forth.
Well, you go back to even things like World War II, and people used to get fake papers to travel around. It kind of feels a bit like that,
Yeah, but you're right. Is there will come a tipping point where, and I was listening to something. I've got an app on my phone which is called COVID-19, where you daily report to the National Health Service and a couple of others your status in terms of health and well-being, and they are estimating that, disregard the national figures that you get published, is there's probably around 1 million people in the UK that have got or have had this already. Never mind, because we're not testing enough anyway, so you don't actually know the number of tests positive is irrelevant at the moment, because we're not testing enough to make that. The number that have died and the number that have recovered are the important ones. But this app, and it's by no means 100% of the population that are using it, is giving an indication that a substantial number, you think UK population is around 65 to 70 million, at least 1 to 2 million have already had it.
And they're looking at, they talk about the herd immunity strategy. What the scientists over here are saying, Jennifer, I don't know about in the US, but what they're saying is that to get herd immunity, you need to have, I think it's at least 60% of the population to have be immune to that virus. And so in the UK, well, in the UK that means around 35, 40 million people thereabouts. But the trouble is, out of those people, it's we've all got aging populations and so on, but out of that 40 million, you've probably got, are we pointing the finger at Andy there?
Andy was pointing at himself.
Sorry, right. But you know what I'm saying here. So the estimates that the UK government are giving right now about COVID deaths are, we're aiming for 20,000. We're hoping to keep it to 20,000. And I don't want to be a harbinger of doom here, but they've got no chance. They've got absolutely no chance, because they left everything way, way, way too late. And it's, what you're looking at in terms of deaths now are people that were admitted to hospital 2 to 4 weeks ago. So the ones that are going to die over the next few weeks are just being admitted right now. And this is, and it's going to be the same in the US as well, Jennifer. It's going to be crazy.
It's really interesting because, of course, we have 50 states and we have all these different political movements that are going on. So we're almost acting like individual countries right now. So I'm paying more attention to our governor than I am to I'm paying attention to what the president's saying, because they're doing a lot of the leading of the efforts. But the governors are the ones who are trying to make sure that we have enough hospital beds in our state that can manage all this. And it's really, I don't know, like our governor's getting a lot, the state of Kentucky is getting tons of really great efforts. Like we keep saying we're flattening the curve. So they're paying attention to history, statistics in St. Louis and in Philadelphia during Spanish flu pandemic, and looking at, okay, they didn't listen, kind of like what Italy told us all. Italy told us all, like, listen, it's coming, pay attention, don't do this.
Yeah.
The United States, you can't control each one of these states. They all have their own method of managing it. So some of our states are not even locked down yet. There's probably 3 or 4 that are still not requiring their population to stay put. And what just kills me in, just look in hindsight 2020, right? But the way that we managed, the NBA closed down, the
Mm.
PGA Tour closed down, Disney World and Disneyland closed down. Now, when major companies like that choose to not earn revenue, you know that there's a reason for it. Like,
Yeah.
they are taking it serious. At that point, the state of Florida allowed the spring breakers to come to the beaches.
Mm.
And they stayed I think they were open another 2 weeks after Disneyland closed. And all those people, the entire eastern region of the United States goes to Florida for
Yep.
vacation and then brought it all back. So, I mean, now every single state has a case in it at minimum, but we're all watching our own individual spikes. So it's definitely interesting. We're maybe getting close to a half-hour mark. I'm not sure when we exactly started, but let's shift right back to the food industry just to make sure that we're hitting a little bit of conversation about things that the industry can do. We've talked a lot about observations, predictions. Let's talk about how maybe how we can suggest companies to shift. We have topics like audits, supplier management, and suppliers. What else can we shift to online that might be able to help them move forward during this and stay relevant during this huge pandemic that may last a couple of years? So, Andy, why don't you start?
Well, although it's not our specific area, but training. A lot of training is now being offered online. There's nothing beats face to face, but you can get everything from one-on-one online training that we talked about before the podcast to training to a reasonably large group. So I know quite a few of the consultants are using it as an opportunity to get them, not just doing the spring clean, but also have a look at their training needs and see whether they can update those.
Yeah, I mean, there's some. I've got some crazy ones, that you kind of think about and you try and innovate, and sometimes innovators go too far to prove the concept, and then you get something that is actually in reality in between. But the two things that are kind of in my mind, if companies need to maintain their margins, and in terms of manufacturing, for example, if you've got a BRC auditor on site for 2 days, it's hugely disruptive, because that BRC auditor needs to be accompanied, people need to meet with that auditor, and all the time that whoever is spending that time with that auditor is spending with them, they're not doing something else, right? So they're not being productive in something else. Now, the certification is required. We need to have the standards. We need to be able to check and verify and these kinds of things. So in the medium term, I would like to see more digitization of these data points so that we can don't need to check those things because we've got the data, we've got the information and so on. But the two other things, and one of these NSF are doing and a few other people are doing, is the kind of Google Glass audit type of idea where you can ask someone to put the Google Glass audits on and you direct them to where you want them to go, what you want it to see, and you're recording everything. That's as good as being on site. You don't need to jump on a plane. You're not killing the planet, and you're sharing information digitally. Now, the other kind of one of the drawbacks of that technology is that the human who's wearing the glasses is typically from the supplier, so they can look away perhaps and not look at the things that might require oversight. So here's a wacky idea, and this is what I'm saying about being out there. What about an audit drone that could go into a factory and it could fly around and look at the things it needs to look at? It could interview people and ask questions, get that information back, and then all of that then is recorded and analyzed by whatever, artificial intelligence or an auditor who is supervising the whole thing or whatever. Obviously, safety is a potential issue there, those rotors could take your eye out or your head off, you know?
Yeah.
Great idea. I love how you have out there topics all the time, and I love it because that just shows the entrepreneurial spirit and the innovation that you have in what you design. So you have to have that as part of your brainstorming process.
Yeah.
Things that I think immediately could be done that, and of course, I'm speaking at it from a consultant point of view, but since there are so many food safety consultants that are grounded right now, they can't go places. It's a perfect time to do gap audits against
Yeah.
the EGFSI schemes for your program. So I think that is one area that I just think that would be a huge value to everyone is, okay, I can't have an audit right now, but I'm helping a consultant, I'm paying them, they're able to make their income, I can keep paying them to do the work. And maybe it's not the same auditor that you would have had come in your facility, but work with somebody else that has that training and be a great time to do it. Like, how far am I from issue 8? Or maybe a good time too, if the importers are kind of heads down, or I'm not sure because some of mine are heads down and some of mine are not doing anything at all. So I think it just depends on what the product is that they're importing. Might be a great time to look at BRC issue 2 for agent broker scheme, where they can start improving their programs and making themselves more marketable and more value add to their clients. Those are the two big things. And like Andy said, training, I definitely see a huge need for training. An area that concerns me with training is that we have a ton of just a ton of things going on social media right now, and our email boxes are getting hit with a lot of that training, and some of the training is an hour long and some are full PCQI training, 2.5 days. So I think that that's one that's difficult to sift through right now, so I'm hoping to see that kind of normalize in the future too. Andy, did you have another topic?
Yeah, I did. I was sort of building a little bit on James's drones zooming around there, but we need to get away, I think, from the idea of the audit being a one event per year.
Mm-hmm.
It should, the whole idea of unannounced audits is that you're always audit ready. So with the digitization, etc. process, we should be, it should be able to be at any point that visibility becomes apparent. It's not just reliant on, oh yes, we've got the drones coming in today, we better open the door or the window and let it in or something like that. Is whatever it is. We need to move to a situation where it's not that one event per year that you do your annual high level clean 2 weeks before. You make sure you're it's all that's what unannounced is meant to get away from, but we need to get away from the idea even unannounced is still once a year, so it should be
well
continuous.
I mean, why does it even need to be a formal event?
Yeah, exactly.
There is so much of this that can be digitized, whether it's cooking temperatures or testing that's done, micro tests or sampling, or the fact that an operator working on that line has been trained. All of these things, these are all digital points that could be stored in a system and even then shared directly with your customer, so they don't need to be looking at that stuff. They can just focus in on the development of products and quality aspects, whatever it is, so they focus in on the stuff that's important, that adds value. Because let's face it, these audits that happen on on a regular basis, they're nearly all covering the same ground, a vast majority of the same ground. You've seen it, Andy. You do a load of audits, right?
Yeah, and so often it's copy paste of existing audits with maybe 5 to 10% that might be end user specific, and that's it. Yeah, and you just think, I'm not adding value to the factory. I'm not adding value to the people that are sending me here, and it's really not doing me any good either doing it. So why are we doing this? It's ticking a box, and it's not driving forward food safety, quality, or anything.
Right.
Yes, so maybe that whole digitizing, taking things, digitizing them, and then getting, Andy and Jennifer, that's definitely an area that I spend a lot of time and effort and an investment on, in terms of getting to the point where you can truly help a company digitize what they do. But people talk about blockchain. We've had lots of conversations about that in the past, and my big argument is, well, you can talk about blockchain all you like. If your systems are not digitized in the first place, blockchain is of very little value to your business.
Right.
So you need to, it's a two-stage process here. You have to digitize internally first, then you've got actual, real, validated information that you can share onto a digital ledger, kind of thing. So maybe that's another point. Maybe COVID will really drive the push towards not just general digitization within a food business, but actually digitization of the entire sector, because you have to remember this, if it's all to be believed, started as a food hygiene issue in a live animal market in China. So it doesn't get any more related to food safety than that. This is the world's single biggest food safety incident in history. And, what we're all talking about is the infection that's arisen as a result of cross-contamination with a virus in a food market. And we can't lose sight of that. So if that's the case, and it is, then there has to be a backlash at some point from the regulator onto the food industry to make sure that nothing like this could ever happen again, because it's been so devastating that it would be senseless to just accept and that this could happen again and ignore it. The risk of it and the impact of this is just too great for regulators not to look at tightening up on supply chain compliance, for example, in my opinion. So this is one of the big predictions I'm putting out there, is that regulators are going to come down hard in the next 1 to 2 years on food supply chains in terms of compliance, and all of that is going to really push towards digitization and probably blockchain or digital ledger, whatever you want to call it.
Right. And just to echo that, I know the FDA has really revved up their programs with the Food Safety Modernization Act, and all of them going into effect sequentially the past few years. We are seeing a huge amount of digital audit requests already. So the FSVP audits are now getting announced via email. I expect that with this, episode that we're in, the pandemic, with the FDA auditors are just as at risk if they are going on site to places. So my guess is that they'll be wanting access to digital records, just like all of the GFSI schemes. So it's coming, whether we're ready for it or not. It's definitely coming. And working with companies like yours for software development to help you get digitized makes complete sense, and should be on the front thought of all of our food industry on how to do it, from the farmer all the way to the food service person who is now struggling to figure out how to make sure that their restaurant stays open. Everybody can play a part on digitizing their data. It's not hard. It's hard to change, and if they're used to doing it and, with manually writing things down on pieces of paper, but as people are designing, as new companies emerge out of this, because yes, we're going to see a lot of closures, to Andy's point. We definitely will see a lot of closures to these companies, but I think we'll also see new companies come out of this. And if they are proactively thinking, they're going to digitize their data first. And that's what I would encourage them to definitely do, is start thinking about, how can I build a restaurant in an online market? How can I build it with digital data? How can I make sure my customers are safe and have good food, safe food to consume and eat? And then, of course, the rest of the supply chain behind them is going to be doing the same thing they need to be. So do you have any more final thoughts, Andy? I think we're getting close to needing to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think, what you said about digitization is, in the current crisis, how many people are having to go into work simply because they haven't digitized their records? Because there is only one paper copy of that production record. That the risks that that it just destroys the whole sort of principle, because you didn't make that jump. And unfortunately, the number of companies that I was auditing that still, and these were sometimes quite large companies, were still on paper systems. they know what they want to do, they just haven't made that jump. Now, maybe that, this is one of the silver linings that hopefully come out of this.
Probably another topic another day, but we need to at some point talk about manufacturing and the culture, of the employee culture, because as auditors, all three of us have seen this where digitizing data is great, but there's also that factor of some people still have to interact with the food and with the assembly line of it, and they also still need to be overseen because behavior, we see it all the time. Training's important, but you can't really just have everybody in a food manufacturing facility step away. As much as we'd love to see it all automated and done by robots, I think a lot of us would prefer that in some cases, but those robots have to be taken apart and cleaned, and somebody has to monitor that it's being done properly. So
we could have enforcement by drones that have got like electric shock sticks.
All right. Well, let's do one thing before we close the call. Why don't like one more discussion about our company and how we can help people in this crisis be able to handle it. So I'll go first. Again, my company is Safe Food en Route. You can find it on www.safefoodenroute.com. You can contact me if you'd like to have a direct conversation, and I know we'll post the websites in the comments below. My company focuses on supplier management and supplier compliance management, so if that is something that we can help you with, let us know. Andy, why don't you give yours, and we'll end with James so that James can do the digital part.
Yeah, my company is Wyvern Food Solutions. The website, LinkedIn profile, etc., will be on the show notes. Basically, I provide food safety and quality advice, ranging from blue chip companies down to startups. HACCP Food Safety. I'm a PCQI. I do work with food safety FSVP plans for the importers into the US as well. So, yeah, over to you, James.
Okay, so we do digital software that helps companies digitize food safety management systems, and we're also working on artificial intelligence technology that monitors your supply chain for issues, problems, and risks, and so on as well. So we would like to really help the food industry in its journey along digitization and making sure that the management team can access their systems from anywhere. But one thing I'd like to finish with is that this is our first podcast, or what do you call these? A vlog. Sometimes they call them vlogs as well. But yeah, so this is our first one, and we've got a lot to talk about, as you can see, and we would like to hear some suggestions from you about some of the topics you might want to be covered. And if you know a great guest speaker, do let us know as well. We'll have a comments thing down here somewhere. And if there are any questions that are relevant to either myself, Andy, or Jennifer, please do reach out to us, and we'll be glad to help. Back to you, Jennifer.
All right. Well, we thank you for your attention and hope that this was relevant and helpful to our current circumstances. We will all be here for you if you need us. Just look in the comments that are posted and find out who you want to talk to, and maybe you want to talk to all three of us, and we're happy to help that way too. Again, good luck with the pandemic. Stay home if you can. If you're one of the essential employees, we really appreciate the efforts that you're taking to make sure that we are either safe from the medical industry, like people like Andy's wife. We really appreciate your time and efforts. And if you are in the food industry, what can we say? We're here for you. We want to help you. Hopefully you can listen and gain some insight on maybe ways to change your programs during this time, or maybe get some tips on how to do it in the future. So stay tuned. We'll have several more podcasts to broadcast in the future. And again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, guys.